This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right. Fact Check This podcast. Let's wrap it up with making America procreate again. The MAGA fertility fanatics. The thing I thought was really most interesting about this was that the Economist lists this as one of their long reads, and I thought it was kind of mid. But here we go. We're going to dive right in. Not wasting any time on this one today. Make America procreate again. Among the MAGA fertility fanatics, tech bros and religious conservatives have joined forces to boost the birth rate. Ordinarily, Tim Atkinson, a trucker, sleeps in the back of his vehicle. But on a warm night at the end of March, he checks into a hotel in Austin, Texas. He had dressed up smartly, white linen shirt and chinos, hair brushed forward in an attempt to mask his receding hairline. On his wrist, he wore a yellow paper wristband. This accessory was meant to signal to the people he'd meet that evening that he was single, open to dating, and most importantly, looking to procreate a lot. I'm 32 years old, and I haven't had any kids, Atkinson told me. We were sitting next to each other eating a dinner of roast chicken and broccoli in the auditorium of the Bullock Texas State History Museum. It was the opening ceremony of NatalCon, a 2-day conference that tasked itself with gathering the brightest minds in the world in search of new solutions to the global fall in birth rates. The 200-strong crowd was full of self-proclaimed pronatalists, those who believe that people, at least people like them, should be having more children, and that if they don't, society, at least as they know it, will collapse. I'm already 100% on board with all of this. Atkinson, whose solitary life on the open road gives him a lot of time to think, was concerned that he was contributing to the problem. You know, the alarm bells were going off. Like, why hasn't this happened for me? There was a flash of vulnerability in his face. It's not just trucking, he said. It's not me specifically. It's everywhere. He had seen influencers speaking online about NatalCon and decided to pay the $1,000 fee to attend. Matchmaking wasn't the point of the conference. Rather, it was billed as a serious academic affair that would feature pronatalist thinkers, tech entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and people with the ear of the Trump administration. Still, Atkinson wanted to try his luck among a like-minded crowd. He filled out a Google form that was sent out to single attendees before this opening ceremony, on which he listed his age, spiritual background, and the number of children he wanted, from 1 to 7 or more. Now that he was here, though, he didn't like his odds. It's like 8 to 1 men to women, I swear, he said, giving a cursory glance around the room. I'll give it a shot, but I'm not holding my breath. No shit, Sherlock. The fact that it's not well over 10 to 1 is actually kind of impressive, but nonetheless. Atkinson had voted for Donald Trump and described his own politics as hard right. In that sense, he might have found his people. The conference dining room was a jumble of libertarian tech workers and religious conservatives, representatives of the so-called Tech Trad Alliance that helped propel Trump to a second term in the White House. Now, going back to the last article that we talked about, and the one on male friendships and the lack thereof, and then, you know, dudes trauma dumping on their girlfriends because they don't have strong male friendships. This Tim Atkinson needs to turn his thinking around, and this is a good place to network and connect and make some strong male friends, especially if he's like, you know, he's over the road truck driver. Dude, these are people that you can like meet in person and stop, you know, have stops and lunch with and talk to, start a group chat, like make friends here. This is a place to do it, but nonetheless. Many governments have tried to bribe people to have more babies. For these political bedfellows, falling birth rates are an existential crisis with potentially devastating consequences for the American economy, national security, and the MAGA project. I don't know what MAGA project is, but okay. Tech billionaires like Mark Anderson, Palmer Luckey, Peter Thiel, and most famously Elon Musk have all publicly fretted about the issue and funneled money into companies and research initiatives that are developing reproductive technologies. Or they could all just take the same approach as Elon Musk and crank out as many fucking kids as possible. That also works. Teal is gay, so probably not going to work that way for him, but you never know. But is Peter Thiel gay, or does he just fuck dudes? We never really figured out the answer to that question. Meanwhile, religious conservatives like those at the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing think tank, have been pushing for policies that might, in theory, help expand the population, such as banning abortion and reducing subsidies for contraceptives. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, is at the nexus of the Tech Trad Alliance. As a vocal convert to Roman Catholicism, whose political career was supercharged by Thiel, his former boss, Vance has been thrilled to help make pronatalism an explicitly MAGA issue. He has criticized prominent Democrats who don't have biological children for being childless cat ladies. That's not a criticism of Democrats without children. That's us making fun of liberals. And the fact that they don't understand the childless cat lady thing, that they think it's about the being childless. No, it's about the being a cat lady. The childless just happens to add to how embarrassing that should be for them. Taylor Swift then pointedly used the phrase in her endorsement of Kamala Harris last year. Taylor Swift and Kamala Harris, both childless cat ladies. Wow, crazy. I mean, I guess Kamala has stepkids, but that doesn't count. That's a lie. Stepkids count. Do stepkids count for women? There we go. I think stepkids count for men, but not for women. Oh, yeah. I'm sticking with that. Let's see. He made a point of saying in his first public address as vice president that I want more babies in the United States of America. Trump, in turn, has declared himself the fertilization president and recently unveiled a plan to offer discounted fertility drugs through Trump RX, the administration's direct-to-consumer website, due to launch next year. There was a sense amongst many at NATOCon that with Trump and Vance in power, the moment to jumpstart American baby making had come at last. But those gathered outside the museum on the opening night of the conference had a different impression. That pronatalism was part of a broader and more insidious project to create a whiter America. And a group of protesters, their faces mostly covered, gathered in the museum's courtyard. Nazis off our campus, they screamed through a megaphone as conference attendees streamed in. One sign read eugenics with the word natalists crossed through. Why are these fucking faggots so unimpressive with their protests? Go away, you dipshits. And the idea that pronatalism is some insidious project to create a whiter America. You know who the people that are primarily pumping out kids are? It's not white people. I mean, white people need to be. It's not to create a whiter America. It's to just create some sort of a balance in what's currently going on. Instead of importing 6 million fucking third worlders who can never actually integrate into Western society. Maybe people should, the people who live here, who are a part of this society, should start having their own fucking kids. Crazy idea, I know. It's not, and they always Nazis off our campus. Oh my God, get an original fucking idea or blow your brains out already. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these retards? Good God. Atkinson didn't mind being heckled. I've been called a Nazi at least 500 times in my life, he told me with a shrug. He didn't see what all the fuss over pronatalism was about. The message is simple. Go have babies. And the left is going nuts. Well, I mean, that makes sense when you understand that the left wants to murder babies. They don't want you having the babies. They want you to get pregnant so that you can then murder the baby. That's what they think is like really empowering, is to be able to murder your babies. Globally, birth rates are falling. Recent analysis by The Economist suggests that if current trends continue, the world population is likely to peak at 9.6 billion in 2065 and then tumble. It is even possible that it might stop growing in the 2050s and never exceed 9 billion. America currently has a total fertility rate of 1.6 children per woman, meaning that it is well below the replacement rate of 2.1, the standard estimate of what's required to keep a population stable. But it is still more fecund than Europe or East Asia, parts of which are reckoning with total fertility rates of 1 or less. In many ways, falling birth rates are a symptom of something positive, that more pregnancies are planned and more women are exercising agency over their lives. But the consequences of population decline are uncertain. If each generation is smaller than the one previous, then there could be fewer workers to shoulder the burden of caring for the elderly and servicing public debt. Servicing public debt is the thing that they're really worried about. AI might compensate for a fall in number of humans, but it's impossible to say how much. AI, automation, there are a lot of things that are currently being done by a lot of people that there's no reason that people should ever be doing them anymore anyway. That's just falling birth rates can be accounted for and adjusted for, but AI and automation and robots don't service the public debt. And that's the big problem. One way for a country to deal with a shrinking population is to let in more foreigners. But immigration is a contentious issue for voters around the world. Populist parties and leaders, particularly in Europe, often marry anti-immigration sentiments with pro-natalist ones, arguing that natives having children is the best way to preserve national identity and culture. That's not something that should be controversial. That's legitimate. Importing immigrants in does not solve your population crisis. It just creates whole other problems while you still have a problem of not enough people reproducing. Many governments have tried to bribe people to have more babies. South Korea, which has a total fertility rate of 0.72, the lowest on earth, has spent $270 billion over the past 20 years on pro-natalist policies, subsidizing taxis for pregnant women, providing free IVF, and in some towns giving new mothers free housing. This year, it began granting couples a cash payment of close to 30 million won over 8 years for each child they have. Which 30 million won is the equivalent of $20,000 over 8 years for each child they have. Viktor Orban's government spends 6% of Hungary's GDP on pro-natalist policies, including a lifelong exemption from income tax for mothers of 2 or more children. Holy fucking shit. If they did a lifelong exemption from income tax for the parents of 2 or more children, like let's say mom and dad, you have 2 kids, you stick together, you don't have to pay income tax ever again. I bet that would jumpstart the U.S. population. I mean, instantly, over a fucking night, sign the bill and people are going to start getting at it immediately. You mean how fast can we pop 2 kids out to never have to pay fucking income tax ever again? Please. Can I get grandfathered in? I've got 2 kids. Please? Like, how fast? How fast would that jump start it? Why are we not doing something like that? These policies have had little effect. South Korea's low birth rate has barely budged. All right, so South Korea has its own problems. The culture is a lot more worried about all right, so like all the K-pop shit and like from playing online games and some like mobile games and stuff, and a lot of Koreans play a lot of these mobile games, and they're like their priorities in life and the things that they really care about are fucking insane. Like their entire lives are based online almost. Like K-pop is Korean culture right now, and that's fucking nuts. So yeah, like you're not going to incentivize people who don't care about anything other than like, you know, likes and clicks and being the best online version of you, as opposed to being the best real world. Like, there's a group of us that, you know, going back to like previous episode and talking about friends groups and stuff like that. Like, there's a group of us that became friends through playing a video game, and in the video game, like there were a bunch of Koreans who would like talk down to us and bully us because we don't spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on this game. And it's like, dude, I've got multiple houses and vehicles and kids. Like, why would I spend like, oh, why do you do all that stuff when you can, like, what is that? Like, what the like I can't even begin to fathom or understand how your entire like world revolves around what you do online. It's like sometimes I say the internet was not a net positive. And then when you see stuff like that with Korea, man, maybe it wasn't, you know? Hungary's is 1.56 lower than its neighbors, Romania and Bulgaria, which have spent far less on promoting births. Look, having a child is more like joining the military than going out to dinner, Catherine Pakluk, a speaker at NatalCon, told me. That's why cash incentives don't work. Pakluk is a professor of political economy at the Catholic University of America, where her research touches on economics of family and demography. Women now have all of these wonderful options, which is to be celebrated, but that renders childbearing a choice. Having a kid being more like going or joining the military and then going out to dinner is absolutely correct. And just like I said, the tax exempt or the no income tax for life, that would be a big one, I think. But just like tax or, you know, $20,000 over 8 years or whatever, like just cash incentives are not enough, because there's so much more than just the financial burden that comes with kids. So yeah, it has to be incentivized in a different type of a way. To understand why people make that choice, Pakluk interviewed 50 American women who had unconventionally large families of at least 5 children. One of the things she found was that raising children is a learned skill, something she knew from experience too. I had lots of siblings, so I was always around children. I had a sense of what it would be like to have my own. Pakluk now has 8 children and 6 stepchildren. Pronatalists fear that women in low fertility countries are becoming accustomed to being around fewer children and will, in consequence, find the prospect of having their own too daunting. The result, they say, would be a doom loop that will speed up the rate of native population decline. This prospect has been particularly alarming to pronatalists in America. Although the country has long considered itself a nation of immigrants, it is now in the midst of the sharpest nativist turn in recent memory. As the Trump administration tightens visa rules and deploys immigration and customs enforcement agents to bundle suspected illegal immigrants into vans for deportation. Yes, illegals need to be deported. That's not controversial. Going back to the beginning of this, the doom loop of like not being around kids, and so then you're not sure if you want kids, and then you're not sure if when you do decide or start to think you want kids, you don't know if you can handle the kids, and like you always hear these people are like, we just don't know if it's, we just don't, it's just not the right time. It's not the right time. It's not the right time. Let me let you in on a secret about kids. There will never be a right time. It doesn't matter what you do. You are never going to get yourself in a position where you think that you are financially, emotionally, and relationship-wise, and like you're never going to get to a point where you think that you're ready for kids. Now, let me let you in on another little secret. There will never be a time when you are ready for kids. Period. You are not ready for them. That's what makes it fun. That's the part of parenthood that makes it just absolutely infuriating and rewarding all at once. You're never going to be ready. You're never going to have enough money. You're never going to feel like you've got that security of your job. Excuse me. You're never going to be in a position where you think that you are mentally and physically and emotionally ready for a kid. And that's fine. None of us were. None of us. My son is 17. My daughter's 15, getting ready to be 16 in a month and a half. Stepdaughter, 14. She'll be 15 in a month and a half. Every day, something happens that reminds me that I am not ready for this. I am not equipped for these fucking things. And yet I got them. And I got to deal with them. And I get to learn and I get to grow just as much as they do. And that's what makes it fun and rewarding. And worth it. Is we're all in this together. That's also why you need good friend groups too. So like the doom loop. Just going back to the last episode at the end, like just do it. In this case, just do it. Go get after it. The message is simple. Go have babies. And the left is going nuts. To Trump supporters, this makes the need for endogenous population growth urgent. Jack Posobiec, a far-right influencer who was a champion of the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, which alleges that top Democrats were involved in a child sex ring. It's crazy that they still say all of this alleges, and the guy who debunked Pizzagate, was caught as part of a child sex ring. Like, dude. Anyway, and it's a confidant of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. I don't understand why we're introducing Jack Posobiec. Anyway, so Jack Posobiec is a far-right influencer who was a champion of the Pizzagate conspiracy and is a confidant of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. On the first night of NATOCon, he declared, "It's not just a culture war. It's not just a political skirmish. Let's speak bluntly. We are in a war for civilization itself. And in that battle, natalism is our sword and shield." The libertarians and religious conservatives at the heart of the Tech Trad Alliance have proved receptive to this message. They may have slightly different projects, with the trad contingent having large families in the belief that it accords with their faith, go forth and multiply, and their tech counterparts believing that large families composed of bright children and clever parents will lead to a more creative, productive society, go forth and innovate. But they are bound together by a strong sense that the decline in birth rates is a cultural issue, a symptom of liberal decadence, and the short-sightedness of modern culture. And I can't say, honestly, that they are wrong about any of that. At NatoCon, the tech gurus were conspicuous, sporting T-shirts with their company logos and the occasional Patagonia gillet to guard against the aggressive aircon. So, too, were the religious conservatives, who were usually dressed in business casual, their pressed shirts neatly tucked in. The crowd was nearly all male and mostly white. Women were present, but they were often herding gaggles of kids who could be spotted weaving their way through groups of men chatting about children in abstract terms while politely ignoring the real ones at their feet. Why would you? Okay. A bunch of strangers at a giant conference are probably not going to spend a lot of time messing with a bunch of kids that are definitely not theirs. I don't know. That doesn't seem necessarily odd. I met one woman who was a mother of 9 with a 10th on the way. She and her family had traveled from a small town in Texas where they lived in what she described as a raggedy farmhouse. It's hard to meet other people who want families like ours, she said. She saw the conference less as a political gathering and more as a way to build friendships with other Supermax families. Her husband then walked over, repeated that they weren't there for political reasons, and declined on her behalf to be interviewed further. Lyman Stone, a demographer and the head of the pronatalism initiative at the Institute for Family Studies, a conservative think tank, knew the optics of the conference were unpromising. When we met up at NatoCon, he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt that made him stand out from the crowd. We're getting together and all talking to each other about babies, which is kind of a weird thing to do, especially for a group that's like, 70 to 80% men, he chuckled. He understood why women would balk at hanging out with pronatalists. A lot of people associate worries about low fertility with the end of women's rights, with a regressive vision of the future or even a dystopia created by Margaret Atwood in her novel The Handmaid's Tale, in which women are seen simply as baby-making machines. That obviously turns a lot of women off to the whole conversation. The Handmaid's Tale has done more damage to modern society than probably, and especially the and not even the book. Like the book was unimpressive. The TV series has probably done more damage to society, especially to fragile women who are fragile, emotionally unstable women, and their view of this country. I think it's net negative on that. Stone assured me that pronatalism was consistent with protecting women's rights, especially their right to have the families they want. At the same time, he said, his voice sincere, a lot of the women who are highly pronatal are also more interested in their role as mothers than in their role as conference attendees. He said his own wife fell into this camp and had chosen to stay home with their children. The few women who did have a platform at NatoCon were either trad wives, the term for women who voluntarily embrace old-fashioned gender roles, or tech world girl bosses who were keen to show how deftly they were combining their large families with their jobs. One such career woman was Simone Collins, a former managing director of Dialogue, a secretive members-only organization co-founded by Peter Thiel. She took to the conference stage wearing a milkmaid's bonnet, a sly nod to her detractors' Handmaid's Tale jibes, with a baby strapped to her back. It was her 4th child, a girl named Industry Americus. Her 2 daughters have gender-neutral names. Oh, Jesus. At the same time, Simone was expecting her 5th baby. Half of me wants to vomit, and the other half wants to lie down on the stage, she told the audience. She made it through her speech without incident, to rapturous applause. Simone and her husband, Malcolm, are 2 of the most visible tech pronatalists in America. Both in their late 30s, they wear thick black rimmed glasses. Simone's are round, Malcolm's square. Together, they lobby investors and developers who they believe can engineer solutions to America's falling birth rate. They also run the Collins Institute for the Gifted, which offers AI-led homeschooling, write books, and host a podcast. They've invested in fertility tech companies and a dating app for long-term partnerships between people who want children. They were spurred to take up pronatalism around a decade ago when Malcolm was the director of strategy for a venture capitalist fund in South Korea. His boss had asked him to model what the country would look like over the next 5 to 10 decades. You know what will be the big industries? Basic VC stuff. Malcolm remembers being struck by how the country's low birth rate. It doesn't look like Korea has an economy in 100 years, Malcolm told his boss, who he says shrugged it off. That horrified me, he said. It was too late to save South Korea, in his view, but he could do something to save America. Having a child is more like, we already said that. To garner attention for their, to garner attention for their cause, people need to hate us. People needed to hate us to have a reason to talk about us. So we kept doing things that we called media baiting. No press is bad press, right? Malcolm said, the more controversy they caused, he reasoned, the more likely people would be forced to learn about falling birth rates and pronatalist ideas. That's why he shrugged when I mentioned the Guardian profile of the couple, which revealed that he had slapped one of his children in front of the journalist. Sometimes kids need to be slapped. Sorry, if you don't think that sometimes kids need to be slapped, you don't have kids. Sometimes kids need to be slapped. I might go over and slap my 17-year-old just because sometimes he just needs to be slapped just because and for literally no other reason than to keep him in his place. When the piece was published last year, it instantly went viral, causing people online to remark on the Collins' seeming dislike for their own children. If you think slapping your own kid is disliking your kid, you don't have fucking kids and you are part of the problem. When you protect a person from any negative emotional stimulus, they'll quickly spiral into anxiety and depression whenever they encounter difficulties in the real world, Malcolm told me by way of explanation for his actions. I'd wondered whether pronatalism was more attractive to people in the tech industry than to, say, other educated groups in America, because they are some of the few people who feel they can comfortably afford to have massive families. But it was clear that, even for a couple as affluent as the Collinses, some sacrifice was necessary to raise their brood. No fucking shit. Like I said earlier, you are never ready for kids. You are never ready financially. You are never ready emotionally. You are never ready. You just have to do it, and then you figure it out, and you figure out what has to be sacrificed to do it. Rather than living in an urban tech hub, for instance, they moved to rural Pennsylvania, where it was cheaper to buy a house large enough for their host of kids. As Malcolm and I spoke, I noticed that the Collins children were wearing the same black polo shirt as their father. Mostly we just have one outfit for the kids that can change with age, he explained. I noted that seemed like a pragmatic way to raise children. We're breeding at scale, he responded matter-of-factly, so we need to find ways to be frugal. The Collins' path into pronatalism tracks transformations in Silicon Valley over the past few years, as the tech industry's most prominent chief executives have become more visibly entwined with the Trump administration and the wider MAGA movement. Malcolm Collins told me that he didn't find it difficult to move in the same world as the religious conservatives in Trump's base. It's not a messy alliance. We're not taking jabs at each other regularly. We all know each other. In both camps, there was a sense that they had been fighting against the tide of a mainstream liberal culture, what Musk has often referred to as the woke mind virus, and that they, with their heterodox views, were the true champions of diversity. A big part of why the tech and MAGA alliance works so well is because we both are just like, hey, leave us alone. Stop imposing your values on us and stop trying to get our kids to adopt your values. Still, some issues between them are tricky to reconcile, including IVF. The technology accounts for only 2% of American births because it's expensive and often not covered by insurance. But some religious conservatives oppose it as the process produces excess embryos, unborn children, in their eyes. that are often destroyed. The Heritage Foundation supported last year's decision by the Alabama Supreme Court, which ruled that frozen embryos have the same rights as living children. The decree has created confusion over appropriate storage methods and the legal liabilities of those seeking IVF treatment might face. Many of the religious conservatives at NatalCon took a more pragmatic approach to IVF, however, acknowledging that it attracts broad public support. As Peachy Keenan, one of America's most famous trad wives, said in her NatalCon speech, "My best friend used IVF to build her family. I have IVF nieces. In spite of her serious moral qualms about the byproducts of the process, she did not think it was something to block. Neither I, nor J.D. Vance, nor the Pope is going to outlaw IVF. That toothpaste is out of the fallopian tube." Kevin Dolan, the conference's organizer and a Mormon father of 6, with a 7th on the way, concurred. Religious conservatives know they're in the wilderness. They know they won't get to decide if people use IVF or other fertility technologies. Those other fertility technologies are often backed by tech gurus. Teal has invested in 28, a period tracking app, and Gaia, a platform that provides financial planning for those pursuing fertility care. Sam Altman of OpenAI has funded Conception, a company that is working on technology that would allow 2 men to become biological parents of a child. Fuck Sam Altman and fuck that bullshit. Never mind. Anyways. Musk, who moved his family and many of his companies to Texas in a pointed rebuke of California's left-leaning politics, has donated $10 million to the Population Wellbeing Initiative at the University of Texas in Austin. The project aims to conduct foundational research on topics such as fertility, parenting, and the future of population and economic growth in order to provide economic ballast to pro-natalist ideas. Representatives of even the more controversial fertility technologies were clearly welcome at NatalCon. Around the buffet, which featured seared beef for those loading up on protein, I saw a few employees of Orchid, which sells whole genome sequencing for embryos. They were identifiable by the company's stylized bird logo on their t-shirts. Typically, whole genome sequencing tests are performed once a child is born to let parents know if their baby is at risk of potentially life-altering diseases. Orchid, in contrast, conducts these tests before an embryo is even implanted to ensure that those which are selected have the best chance of becoming healthy adults should they be carried to term. Other companies offer to screen embryos for desirable qualities like intelligence. Many scientists are skeptical that this can actually be done. It has been reported that Musk has used Orchid's services as he attempts to do his bit for pronatalism in his personal life. He has 13 or 14 children that we know of, with 4 women that we know of. As Julia Black, a freelance reporter who writes about the tech world, explained to me at NatalCon, Silicon Valley is obsessed with meritocracy. They also firmly believe in heritable traits and the role of genetics and markers like IQ. They're firmly on the nature side of the nature versus nurture divide. Honestly, I am too. I think I've talked about my kids before and how I see a lot of nature in the way they are, more so than the nurture side. In some ways, this obsession is understandable. Most parents would do anything to increase their chance of giving birth to a healthy baby who is likely to succeed in life. But critics are concerned that baby-enhancing technologies will be used before they are safe. Others worry they will aggravate inequality by creating super babies solely for the world's elite, whose wealth would inevitably give them access to these technologies first. Okay. I mean, I want our future leaders to be impressive. So if the rich are making super babies, then okay. Some even fear that this way of thinking about conception is only a hop, skip, and a jump from eugenics. Orchid, for its part, strongly denies the suggestion, saying that their work helps to prevent genetic diseases and that equating its work with eugenics is historically illiterate and morally backwards. There's a book it's called Selective Breeding, and some interesting concepts. Most of it's really good. And these people, like this author for The Economist would 100% call it eugenics. And that's selective breeding is a good idea. Just saying. Anyway, but Adam Rutherford, a professor of genetics at the University College of London, who has written books about eugenics, finds some similarities between ideas circulating in the 1920s and 30s, which were driven by the sense that certain populations were entering terminal decline and needed to be saved by radical social engineering, and today's pronatalism, which is also anxious about who is and isn't having children. When Elon Musk talks about falling birth rates as the end of civilization as we know it, it's worth asking what he means by civilization. What he means is the civilization that we all fucking live in that was built by people that look like us, not the things that for thousands of years have continued to be basically mud huts and shitting in the streets. That's what we mean by civilization, you fucking useless twat. Whew. It was noticeable that at NatoCon, he's the professor of genetics at the University College of London. That's why I called him a twat, if you didn't pick that up. Sorry, trying to be funny while also being angry. It was noticeable that at NatoCon, a conference that billed itself as finding solutions for the biggest global crisis, almost all of the speakers were white Americans. South Korea has celebrity demographers, for instance. Why weren't they speaking? Because they're not actually succeeding in doing anything. Kevin Dolan, the organizer, told me he had invited a broad spectrum of international speakers, but declined to give specific names. Because y'all would have just name dumped them and then put them on the spot and tried to find out why they didn't come. Protect the people who are close to you from scumball journalists. That should be rule number one in a lot of things. At the same time, this year's NatoCon featured a number of speakers known to espouse white supremacists and other objectionable views. Why is white supremacy objectionable? Fuck you. One was Cremiu, a pseudonym for an online troll who has argued that elites are genetically different. They are. And that average national IQs in Africa are much lower than they are in other parts of the world. They are. I don't understand why factual statements are white supremacist and objectionable. NatoCon's openness to such claptrap is perhaps less surprising in light of Dolan's backstory. He once had an anonymous Twitter account where he posted white supremacist and homophobic content in which he used to attack less observant Mormons. He was part of the Desnat movement, an ultra-conservative and nationalist group of fundamentalist Mormons. After being put on a list of internet extremists by the German intelligence services in 2021, he says he was doxxed by Mormon activists and fired from his job as a defense contractor at Booz Allen Hamilton. Dolan's deplatforming was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me, he told me, because it led to the soul-searching that eventually sparked NatoCon. Soon after he lost his job, he founded Exit Group, a men's rights organization, which describes itself as a fraternity of like-minded men who take a short position in the present system and build for what comes next. It offers fitness training, coaching on how to create a startup, and one-on-one matchmaking to connect with an on-side brain trust of other members. Dolan's interest in pronatalism really kicked off after he and his friends watched The End of Men, a documentary from 2022 created by Tucker Carlson, a former Fox News host and current MAGA cheerleader. The film argues that endocrine disruptors are destroying male testosterone, creating a weak and pliant society that is ultimately doomed. Yes, 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 and yes. It opens with a well-known conspiracy theorist and vaccine skeptic claiming that there has been a 50% decline in sperm counts in the last 40 years, along with precipitous decline in testosterone production. That fringe thinker, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is now health secretary. Again, none of this is incorrect. None of this is factually false. They just don't like it. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it untrue. We're heading for a calamity, he continued. That's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration. It's a mathematical fact. It isn't. Except that it is. You look at the math for South Korea. Look at the math for fucking Europe. It is. It's crazy that an author from the Economist is going to say that the math is not fact when they have all of the math. You can look at it. It doesn't take a fucking mathematician to see that the declining birth rates in these countries is going to result in something catastrophic economically. Like, you are the fucking economist. You should look at the economics of this. It is blatantly fucking retarded. Dolan was shocked that population decline wasn't a more mainstream concern. He noted that since his doxing, he's developed relationships with a number of people featured in the film. What if I just got these really smart people together and we try to really hash out this problem from all angles, he told me. When I asked him why NATOCON's speaker roster involves some controversial thinkers, he attributed their presence to a similar thought process. There's an artifact of it being mostly my friends. He didn't think he might need new friends. No! You don't need new friends when your friends are the people who are trying to solve the problem. See, this is why I hate journalists so fucking much. Like, it pushes me to a point of anger that I cannot explain, and that I naturally don't have and shouldn't have. Like, these people are absolute scum of the fucking earth, and they deserve to be outbred. That's why we have to do our job to outbreed them more and more and more as at every turn. Well, maybe, he said before catching himself, but not at the expense of my existing friends. I like them all. American pronatalists have managed to gestate a powerful political idea, but they have yet to see the birth of many serious policies. Trump's proposals to expand fertility care are just getting off the ground. In any case, it seems as if they will fall short of his campaign promise to make IVF treatment free. Vance has thrown other ideas around, like boosting the child tax credit from $2,000 to $5,000 per person and suggesting that parents should get more votes in election than non-parents. Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, has said he will prioritize investment in places with higher birth rates. A more modest proposal is to award a motherhood medal to women with more than 6 children. Fuck a motherhood medal. Fuck some $5,000 tax credit per person. Do the tax exempt for, like we talked about earlier. If you have more than 2 kids, the parents are tax exempt for life, or income tax exempt for life. Fuck your $2,000, $5,000 tax credit. That doesn't mean shit. Income tax exempt for life if you have 2 kids or more. You will get people breeding. And the fact that, see, this is another, like, a failure of the Trump administration, is they haven't done anything with any of this. This was also a big part of their running platform, and no steps have been taken. Nothing has been done. When you've spent as much time as you have kowtowing to fucking Israel, rather than actually trying to take care of the people who voted you into office, that's a fucking problem. This would be an easy excuse me, easy win. Yes, if we can take the single cat lady's right to vote away, like, say if you don't have any kids, you don't get to vote. I'm cool with that. But I am also on record as being 100% completely supportive of anything and everything that restricts people's right to, or people's allowance to vote. You don't have a right to vote. You are allowed to vote. And a lot of people should not be allowed to vote. For Stone, the conservative demographer, it was still too early to expect pronatalists to have coalesced around a core set of policy ideas. Sorry to be an academic about this, he said when we spoke, waving his hand at the NATOCON attendees milling behind us, but I would describe this as a discursive space. Paul Constance, who characterized himself as the only progressive at the conference, agreed. There's a lot of theater and a lot of visionary talk about recovering our civilization, he told me after taking me aside so that we could talk privately, but show me Republican policymakers who have an aggressive or ambitious agenda to make it easier for people to have kids. And again, that's what I just talked about. There are easy wins, and they're not doing anything about it. That fact that the American right has yet to agree on a workable pro-NATO policy should give progressives an opportunity to offer their own ideas. The problem with that sentence is that progressives don't have any ideas and they don't want to address the birth decline. They want to abort more babies, not have more babies. After all, many left-wing staples such as universal health care and subsidized child care could be cast as ways to encourage people to have more children. So far, though, progressives have ceded pro-natalism to the right. That's partly owing to the stigma associated with it. It has become so toxic, said an anthropologist I met at NatoCon. I'm worried being here is tantamount to endorsing eugenics and scientific racism. I'm totally on board with eugenics and scientific racism, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. But it also seems that many either don't see falling fertility as a problem or don't believe governments could do much about it if they tried. They are probably right to think so. For many people, the decision to have children is ultimately guided by emotion. On the second day of NatoCon, I met Saba, an Ethiopian woman dressed in a chic pinstripe suit. As the only black woman there, she had been swarmed all day by curious attendees and journalists. Everyone has been super welcoming, she told me when I finally got a moment with her. I guess I did get a few jokes about whether I'm a journalist or not. But hey, maybe they were asking everyone. I can confirm they were not. People love chatting to me, a blue-eyed white woman, until they found out I was a journalist. Because journalists are the absolute scum of the fucking earth. As soon as anybody finds out you're a journalist, then they don't want anything to do with you, if they have any common sense. And your writing of this has proven that you are scum. Just the whole way this is written has proven that you are the enemy of humanity. And I say the enemy of humanity because we're talking about pro-natalism and you are clearly not on board with saving the human species. So fuck you, bitch. Saba has a high-powered finance job in Hong Kong and used to work in New York and London. Some people at the conference would undoubtedly consider her a member of the metropolitan global elite. Certainly, her lifestyle was a world away from that of Tim Atkinson, the truck driver I sat with at the opening dinner. Yet she was also wearing a yellow wristband indicating that she was single. We're all facing this challenge in cities like New York or Hong Kong, where it is especially difficult with dating. It was hard, she admitted, having such a mobile career. No regrets, but there are trade-offs. Like Atkinson, she was also now in her early 30s and single, without the family she had expected to have by this point. I'm here because I need to really start thinking about this. If I want to have a large family, I can't do that when I'm 37, she told me. She knew the conference wasn't her natural scene, but she wanted to form her own opinion of the people and ideas involved, to understand why she and her friends were having such a hard time dating. I don't like the idea that if I bring this up with my progressive friends, there's immediately this sense that what's being asked is that we chain women to the stove and prevent them from working, she said. She thought the conference was, in fact, attempting to get ahead of the problem before the dystopian alternatives became the only option for the options on the table. Saba hadn't met someone who swept her off her feet yet, but she said she's had some interesting conversations. As I turned to adjust my recorder, another suitor sidled up to her. I moved away. There was plenty for them to talk about. It's interesting to see the way the left talks about pronatalism and having babies versus the way most on the right feel about it. To see people like this Saba chick and others who attend this conference and are there because they do acknowledge that they want to have kids. And they also acknowledge that if they talk about that with progressives, that it's going to be immediately met with some of the most insane, responses of, oh, you're pro eugenics, you're trying to do this and that. Like, this is a problem. And like, I'm not part of the solution. I have done my part. If the replacement rate is 2.1, I have 2 kids. My wife has 3 kids. We've done our part. The 2 of us have averaged out above replacement rate. But this is a large problem. And again, you're never going to be ready to have kids. Yes, Jay. You're never going to be ready to have kids. And that's something that we have a failure of parenting. Like the last article that I talked about with the male loneliness stuff. You've got these dudes that are in their like 30s that don't have good friends. And I guarantee you that they didn't have good male role model, good father figure role model to show them that how to build good male friendships. Yeah, you won't be ready until it happens. Life isn't perfect, but flying by the seat of your pants is fun. That's 100% what having children is. These young couples, these young people who are getting married, and the ones who want to have kids especially, they think everything needs to be perfect. They think they both have to have this much salary coming in, and they need to live in this house, and they need to have this car, and they need to have all of these things, and they go to therapy, and they go to like talk to counselors, and they do all these things because they think that they're not going to know what to do, and they buy all these books and they read all these books. Fuck the books. I never read a single goddamn book. I had plenty of people give me plenty of books about kids, and I threw every fucking one of them on a shelf, and then later on down the road I threw them all away. I will not give those books to anybody. Fuck that shit. You cannot and will not ever be ready, no matter what you think, no matter what you do. It will not happen. Like the very well-off tech family, the Collinses that was talked about in that article, that they've got 5 kids and they had to make a bunch of sacrifices. Like people that were objectively very well off and incredibly intelligent. You are never ready until it happens. And we need strong parental role models teaching your kids, telling your kids, like, don't be scared of life. Don't be scared of risk. Don't be scared to not be ready. If you're not ready, that's fine. You'll figure it out. And we can help you figure it out if you want. But also, you'll figure it out. And it'll be fine. And your kids will turn out fine. Just be good human beings and teach them how to be good human beings. That's the number one thing I tell my kids all the time. I am not your friend. I am here to raise you to be a good human being. And sometimes that requires me to be an asshole. Parents stopped trying to raise their kids to be good human beings and started trying to be their friends. And now you get this generation in their early 30s to late 20s to early 30s that were raised by friends instead of raised by people that were trying to teach them how to be productive, good, strong contributors to society going forward, to build the culture and the world as we have built it. And that's why we have this problem. Go be a good parent and raise your kids to be good human beings. And then they'll understand that part of that is bringing in more human beings and raising them to be good too. That's what you need to do. But it starts with us as the parents. We have to have more kids, and we have to teach our kids how to be good people so that they will go on to have more kids that they can teach to be good people. And no income tax for the rest of your life will be amazing as well. Make that happen, JD Vance. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your day and week. And I will be back to talk about, next week, maybe. We'll see. No, not next week. Next week is Thanksgiving. So I'll be back the week after next to talk about did women ruin the workplace? The women of Vanity Fair wrote an article about their concern that women ruin the workplace. Yes. 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 Perfect. All right. Later.